Chris Motionless is my new favorite frontman, and it has absolutely nothing to do with his performing abilities. What's the reason then? Find out here. I'm Luke, and this is Stage 76. So you probably already read the title of this video and know that the Chris Motionless thing is more for clickbait. For context, I went to the Trinity of Terror tour a few weeks ago in Charleston, West Virginia. At this particular show, Motionless in White played the last on the triple headline. Fantastic show all around. In between a few songs, Chris Motionless made a request to the crowd that I've never heard a single performer make before. Something along the lines of, "Could we cool down the crowd surfing? Give these people a break." I was in awe. Never in my life had I heard someone on stage ask people to stop crowd surfing. They usually want more crowd surfing, not less. I'll admit, the amount of crowd surfing going on at that show was a bit excessive, and I already don't like crowd surfing in the first place. So in that exact moment, Chris Motionless became my favorite frontman. He's the only man to ever stand up for those of us who would rather keep our feet on the ground. As someone who is a hater when it comes to crowd surfing, this served as a massive relief. Crowd surfing is kind of a pain in the ass for everyone who isn't the person surfing. It makes it incredibly difficult to pay attention to what's going on up on the stage. Instead of looking up there, we're all having to look behind us to make sure someone isn't dropped on us. This is especially true for the height challenged, like myself. I'm 5'6", which isn't incredibly short or anything, but it's short enough that if I am or others around me are not paying the proper amount of attention to their surroundings, someone could very easily be dropped on my head. It's happened to me before, and it's not fun. Luckily, I've never had any significant injuries due to crowd surfers, but I've had a few mishaps. I've been all the way up front on the barrier at a few shows, and sometimes the crowd surfers have been too much for security to handle, and I've ended up bent over that barrier, being crushed from the top by a person and from the bottom by a barrier. I've had a couple of pretty scary pops happen in my body as a result of things like that, but so far nothing serious has resulted. When you're in the crowd, you also run the risk of being kicked or struck in some other fashion by these people flying over your head. It's a surefire way to have a few teeth knocked out. I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's certainly something that can happen, and I've seen it happen. The worst thing that really happened to me, though, is one time my glasses got pushed into my face and head, which resulted in a minor but pretty long cut on my forehead. I'm talking so minor that I didn't even notice it until someone pointed it out to me that I had a cut on my head. But I'm lucky. I've seen people have to be carried out of shows due to being crushed or struck by a crowd surfer. Crowd surfing is not only dangerous to the people carrying the surfers, but the surfers themselves. When you're up above everyone like that, you have very little say in what's going to happen to you until you're back on the ground. So if you manage to somehow be guided to a relatively weak part of the crowd that isn't able to support you, there's a good chance you're going to end up hitting the ground. I don't like seeing this happen, but it happens at basically every show I see where people are crowd surfing. It doesn't necessarily even matter if you're a small 12-year-old girl or a jacked grown-ass man, you can still very easily be dropped if you hit a wrong spot in the crowd. All of this can result in injuries and end up removing you from the crowd and diminishing your experience at the show. According to the NHS, at a 3-day festival in the year 2000. Yes, I know it's old data, but I couldn't find much more recent than this, and crowd surfing hasn't exactly changed in the past 22 years. 43 injuries occurred in relation to crowd surfing. The majority of these injuries were suffered by crowd members who were not crowd surfing. The surfing is quite dangerous for the surfer, but in this case, the people who were the most at risk were the people who were just there minding their own damn business. That's kind of messed up. You're just there to see some cool music, and now you're in pain because Joe Schmo decided that he was going to be directly over top of you at an inopportune location. I won't twist the words in this study, though. It was concluded that crowd surfing was relatively safe, especially for the surfers. The chances of being injured in a crowd surfing related accident are still relatively low, regardless of if you're surfing or not. In the mentioned study, just over 0.07% of people at the festival were injured due to crowd surfing. Those are pretty low odds, so I would agree that most of the time you're going to be pretty safe. Granted, the data I've discussed here is from only one event, which is a horrifically small sample size, so additional research would need to be done to form a more formal conclusion. Injuries aren't even the most immediately inconvenient downsides of crowd surfing. I just think it's incredibly annoying. When I go to a concert, I am there to observe the music. Do some headbanging, maybe jump around and mosh a little. I don't do a lot of moshing, but I don't have to because that's my choice. With crowd surfing, you don't really have much of a choice, whether or not you're taking part. Even if you don't choose to surf, you're still basically forced to participate in assisting surfers in their journey to the front of the crowd. That's the part that really sucks, and I can only assume that's why people like Chris Motionless are asking people to give it a bit of a rest. They probably want people to be able to experience their creations without having to worry so much about having to carry people instead of paying attention to the show. And even having the frontman of the last act of a show asking people to quit crowd surfing still won't even necessarily work. At that show I was at, he actually asked people to stop crowd surfing again soon after. I never had someone ask people to stop crowd surfing, and I'd now heard it happen twice at the same set. I know I'm not alone in my disdain for crowd surfing. I know that many I've spoken with agree that crowd surfing is annoying. The primary people I've known to actually like crowd surfing have been the people who do the crowd surfing. For the most part, everyone else has not been a big fan. That's completely anecdotal and should not be taken as absolute fact, but it is what I've experienced. Let me know what you think about crowd surfing in the comments. With that said, thanks for checking out my rant about crowd surfing. Sorry I haven't been uploading as much recently. The rest of my life has been super busy, so these videos have had to take a bit of a backseat. More is coming soon though. I'm planning 5 days of uploads in December. 5 straight days of uploads in December, as a matter of fact. Stay tuned for more. I'm Luke, and this is Stage 76.
When you